Welcome to the Alberta Legislature for Wednesday, May 23rd, 1990. I'm David Carter, Speaker of the House and member of the Assembly for Calgary-Egmont. Today, after question period, the House will be dealing with Committee of Supply, Alberta Capital Fund. As these estimates will conclude this afternoon no later than 5:15. The House also has various bills yet to be determined, of course. At the moment, we have 11 bills at second reading stage, 6 at Committee of the Whole, 1 at third reading, plus a few others to be introduced before the House is able to adjourn. And of course, notice has been given that the House will sit in the fall, probably during the month of November. Let us pray. Our Father, we thank you for your abundant blessings to our province and ourselves. We ask you to ensure to us your guidance and the will to follow it. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions.
Member for Edmonton Meadowlark.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to give notice of a motion under Standing Order 40 that I would raise at the end of the question period to debate, and it is a motion which concerns the issuing of licenses for Diashawa Canada Company Limited. I am calling for the revocation of these licenses until such time as proper environmental impact assessments can be undertaken to ensure that if that plant is to proceed, it will proceed properly.
Thank you.
Introduction of bills.
Provincial Treasurer.
Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill 25, the Alberta Income Tax Amendment Act 1990. Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation is an amendment to the Alberta Income Tax Act, the act essentially governing personal income tax in this province. While many of the changes, Mr. Speaker, deal with the attempts by all governments in the provinces to harmonize their legislation with the federal legislation, one of the more substantive sections in this piece of legislation deals with the changes announced in the budget with respect to the Alberta royalty tax credit and the impact on the personal income tax calculation under those sections. Mr. Speaker, I move first reading of Bill 25, Alberta Income Tax Amendment Act 1990.
The Honourable Provincial Treasurer has moved first reading of Bill 25, Alberta Income Tax Amendment Act 1990. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 25, Alberta Income Tax Amendment Act 1990, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Johnston, is now read a first time.
Provincial Treasurer.
Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill number 30, Alberta Corporate Income Tax Amendment Act. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is similarly founded in the budget, which was the focus of spring session so far, and the budget, of course, dealt with some significant changes which affect both the Alberta royalty tax credit and the introduction of financial institution tax. Those changes, Mr. Speaker, are outlined in this piece of legislation. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, changes in the RTC as they affect double dipping, or the so-called proliferation of associated companies, is in fact dealt with here as well. Finally, Mr. Speaker, along with all tax legislation, this piece of legislation amends our Provincial Corporate Tax Act in line with the changes announced by the federal, under the federal legislation, and to bring into harmony our legislation with theirs. So I move first reading of this bill.
Okay. The Honourable Provincial Treasurer has moved first reading of Bill number 30, Alberta Corporate Income Tax Amendment Act 1990. Those in favour of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. So ordered.
Bill number 30, Alberta Corporate Income Tax Amendment Act 1990, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Johnston, is now read a first time.
Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill number 31, being the Livestock Industry Diversification Act. The purpose of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is to transfer responsibility for overseeing game animal production from Alberta Forestry Lands and Wildlife to Alberta Agriculture, and to permit the sale of elk meat in Alberta. Responsibility for export and import requirements, health and genetic standards will remain with Alberta Forestry Lands and Wildlife. Mr. Speaker, I request first reading of Bill 31.
Order, please. Order. We're at introduction to bill stage. Thank you. It's not quite question period. Bill number 31, Livestock Industry Diversification Act, has been introduced for first reading by the Honourable Minister of Agriculture. Those in favour of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Carried.
Bill number 31, Livestock Industry Diversification Act, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Isley, is now read a first time.
Minister of Energy.
Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill number 43, the Oil and Gas Conservation Amendment Act 1990. The purpose of the bill is to implement the ethane policy announced in August of 1987 and the decisions announced in October 1988 with respect to the Energy Resources Conservation Board's recommendations on implementation. This bill would empower the ERCB to design, implement, and administer a program to ensure the availability of sufficient ethane to maintain the threshold volumes required by the petrochemical industry. Mr. Speaker, this bill also addresses further the issue of compulsory pooling. Pursuant to Section 72 of the Oil and Gas Conservation Act, the ERCB issues pooling orders with respect to a drilling spacing unit. This act will deal with penalties related to forced pooling in this connection.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Energy has moved first reading to Bill 43, Oil and Gas Conservation Amendment Act 1990. Those in favour of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 43, Oil and Gas Conservation Amendment Act 1990, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Orman, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Energy.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased today to table the annual report 1989-1990 for the Alberta Electric Energy Marketing Agency.
Public Works Supply and Services, followed by the member for Banff Cochrane.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to file with the Assembly today responses to questions 286 and 287.
Thank you. Banff Cochrane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased today to file the final report of the Joint Government and Industry Task Force on Builders' Liens. This report was prepared for the Attorney General's Department, Mr. Speaker, and I wish to extend thanks to the chairman of the committee, Peter Knack, QC, and to the entire task force made up.
Member, I'm sorry, it's just a matter of filing. Say what it is and sit down. Thank you.
Speaker.
Education Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to table the 1988-89 annual report of Fairview College.
Thank you.
Introduction of special guests.
Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure today to introduce to you and through you to the members of the Assembly 3 executive members of the Alberta Game Growers Association. Seated in the members gallery is Norm Murr, the president from Alder Flats, Stuart Norton, vice president from McGrath, Alberta, Paul Repkovich, past president and director from Wanding River. I'd ask that they stand and receive the welcome of the assembly.
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you and through you to the Assembly 106 students from the A.E. Cross School from Calgary West. They've been visiting today with their teachers, Mr. Art Hansen, Mr. Gardner, Mrs. Boisgelet, Mr. Moore, Mr. Torres, Ms. Purcell, Mrs. Tutty, Mrs. Turner. They went this morning to see the Edmonton Science Centre. They are here today with us, and following this they will go to another establishment, the West Edmonton Mall, which I'm sure they're all looking forward to. I would ask all of the members of the Assembly to give them their usual warm welcome.
Member for Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today, on behalf of my colleague, the member for Wainwright, to introduce to you and through you to members of the Assembly a group of 37 students from the Blessed Sacred School in the Wainwright area. They are accompanied by their teacher, Mr. Schoenberger, parents, Mrs. Theobald, Mrs. Smith, and Mrs. Watt, and the bus driver, Mrs. Ermel. And they are in this members gallery, and I would ask they rise and receive the traditional welcome of the Assembly.
Edmonton Highlands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce to you and through you to members of the Assembly today someone who's visiting Alberta from Quebec for the summer. He is Benoit Beauchemin, and he has been hired under the Quebec-Alberta Exchange Program under the Department of Career Development and Employment. He's seated in the public gallery. I'd ask him to rise and receive the traditional welcome of the Assembly.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Environment. Mr. Speaker, last week we had the spectacle of an Environment Minister who isn't trusted by his own government to bring in a major piece of environmental legislation. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister showed us just how far he's prepared to go in caving in to other government members who don't think pulp mill developers should have to be inconvenienced by public hearings into their projects. Mr. Speaker, and of course I'm talking about the fact that yesterday he issued operating license for the Diashawa pulp mills behind closed doors with no public input.
Shame.
Now, Mr. Speaker, not too long ago the minister said this in an answer to a written question from the member for Edmonton Jasper Place, and I quote, "Public involvement is a fundamental principle of this government, of the government of Alberta's commitment to protection, improvement, and use of the environment now and into the future," Mr. Speaker. So much for fundamental principles from this minister and this government, Mr. Speaker. But just out of curiosity to the minister, Mr. Speaker, does the minister still stand by this statement?
Of course, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Lip service.
Mr. Speaker, that is rather interesting, Mr. Speaker. Rather an interesting answer, because yesterday he did precisely the opposite. If he still believes in fundamental principles, Mr. Speaker, why is it then that he issued these operating licenses? Why did he double-cross the people of Alberta and issue these operating licenses with no public input, which he said was a fundamental principle of his?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, there was public input, and secondly, there was no reason not to issue the license.
Mr. Speaker, you're a disgrace from your statements that you've made. You're saying to this Assembly that there was a public input. The minister knows full well, Mr. Speaker, that's crap. There was no public input. And I want to ask this minister, can't he see by issuing the Diashawa license now without public input, Mr. Speaker, without public input, that he is betraying the public, environmentalists, natives, and the Peace River itself. That's what he's doing, Mr.
Hear,
Speaker.
hear.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honorable leader of the opposition is a disgrace himself. He's a disgrace for misleading this House, Mr. Speaker. Now I'm going to tell the honorable member a story. I'm going to tell him a story about a company that came to this province, Daishoa, wanting to build a mill, wanting to invest $500 million of their own money in this province. I want to tell them about a company that submitted an environmental impact assessment, that held public consultation meetings throughout the whole of the forest management area. I want to tell the honorable member about a company that submitted all their documents to my department, including the public comments, for a deficiency review. I want to tell the honorable member a story about a deficiency review that was submitted to the federal government and signed off under the rules of the day. Mr. Speaker, that company played by all the rules of the game. As a matter of fact, they went beyond the rules of the game. They spent millions and millions of more dollars to refit that mill midway through the construction, to make it probably one of the cleanest mills in the world, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, now that the mill is built, what would the Socialist NDP do? They would sit there and look at it. They would sit there and look at it. Or they would say, my gosh, what we're going to do, we're going to deny employment. But maybe we can dismantle it and give people jobs. And maybe remantle it at the west end of the legislature to create more paper for the honorable member for Jasper Place.
Perhaps the Honourable Minister of the Environment would be kind enough to stand up and withdraw the mark directed at the Leader of the Opposition mislead the House, because it's been ruled out of order in 85 and again in 89. Honourable Minister.
I'll withdraw the statement, but it doesn't change my opinion of the honorable member.
Leader of the Opposition, second main question.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, that's fine. I accept the apology and the light that was given. We know he has no clout with the cabinet, and he's lost every battle, Mr. Speaker.
Sure do.
I'd like to direct my...
Sorry, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the Chair directed that it be withdrawn. It was withdrawn. Apology, yes, right. Carry on with your main question.
Speaker, I'd like to direct designate to the member for Edmonton Jasper Place my second question.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of the Environment hides behind the tattered fabric of Alberta's environment laws. You call it a game. That's deadly dioxin that you're allowing to be dumped in there. I would like this minister, who says in his news release that these are the most stringent standards that we know of in the world for a craft mill, if you would tell that to Oregon, where they told Daishoa to take their dioxins and get lost. If you would tell it to Sweden, where they've told their industry to get zero dioxin by the end of this century or they're out of business. Or if you would tell it to the proponents of zero effluent pulp mills in Saskatchewan and British Columbia. So I wonder if the minister would now care to stand up and name just one environment minister anywhere else in the world who has licensed a new source of dioxin pollution this year. Name one.
I'll name Alberta, but Mr. Speaker, I was recently in Washington where I had conversations with the EPA. As a matter of fact, there are mills there under construction. They are bleachcraft mills. There are numerous studies going on in the United States relative to this issue of dioxin and furan. As a matter of fact, they're studying about 104 bleachcraft mills that are far worse polluting mills than any that would ever be allowed in the province of Alberta. Mr. Speaker, the simple fact is that whatever is deemed the best in the world, if it's deemed to be the best in Sweden, if it's deemed to be the best in the United States, including Oregon, then that is what will have to be applied here. I've said that time and time again to the honorable member, but as usual, he can't understand.
Well, this minister thinks he's going to solve the problem of other people's polluting mills by building more bleachcraft, chlorine dioxide pulp mills. I mean, where's the logic in that? You're going to solve their problem by building more and licensing more? The minister has claimed ignorance of the research on the effects of lethal cancers, lethal heart disease, and lethal neurological damage caused by dioxins, in which case he is willfully negligent, willfully ignorant, and I say shame on him. And I would like the minister to say today what proof he has that the dioxins he licensed last night in the middle of a hockey game are going to be benign and not cause health effects in Alberta. What proof do you have?
Well, being a Calgary Flames fan, the hockey game had less importance and significance to me than perhaps the honourable member. But nonetheless, we released the permit, Mr. Speaker, in consultation with, or in coincidence with a meeting with the town council in Peace River, coincidental with the meeting of the Daishoa Citizens Liaison Committee in that town, and coincidental with a meeting with Friends of the Peace. And we thought that it was only fair to let those people know before the license was issued, and I think that that demonstrated a tremendous goodwill on their part, because they missed the hockey game as well, Mr. Speaker. But with respect to this whole issue of dioxin and furan, the fact is that we are achieving in this province 1.5 maximum absorbable organic halide, which includes the whole family of dioxin and furan. And those standards today are deemed to be the best available standards in the world. If there are standards, Mr. Speaker, that can be achieved that are better, what we have agreed to do, and the Friends of the Peace thought that this was a commendable move, is to set up a review process, legislate that review process if possible, and have the citizens involved in monitoring the evolution of new technology, and to make sure that that technology is applied to the mills before new licenses are reissued.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear that these standards are just numbers on a page to the minister, and his words about community input are just words on a page, only that. And I wonder if the minister would undertake this much, if he would agree, instead of these chemical standards, to have biological testing of pulp mill effluent in Alberta. So the first time we would test the effect of these effluents on living organisms, especially chromosome damage. A company in Edmonton can do that. We agree to bring in biological monitoring standards for pulp mills in Alberta so we know the effects of these things and not simply his words.
Mr. Speaker, this whole issue of pulp mill technology is evolutionary. And as new technologies are discovered, and yes, we will participate in any kind of a study that is going to improve the environmental protection on pulp mills. But the simple fact is, Mr. Speaker, that unless we want to get rid of all paper, and as the honourable member pointed out, paper that the Japanese, as he pointed out, that the Japanese want to have to wipe their noses and other parts of their body, which I thought was inherently unfair. But if we want to have paper, Mr. Speaker, and if we want to have a good and diversified economy, an environmentally safe economy, then we have got to accommodate a certain amount of industry, but we've got to make sure, as we are making sure in this province and through this government, that it is environmentally safe. That it is environmentally safe, and that we're constantly on top of the technology that is evolving with respect to environmental protection. That is exactly what we are doing, Mr. Speaker.
Calgary Buffalo on behalf of the Liberal Party. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Deputy Premier. Mr. Speaker, all Canadians have to be concerned at the impact of recent events in Ottawa on national unity and the consequent need to reach out to the province of Quebec. At the same time, the strong support of Meech Lake by extreme Quebec nationalists like Mr. Bouchard tends to fortify our concerns about how Meech Lake weakens Canada and would prevent Senate reform. So this is clearly a time for meaningful leadership and compromise so that June 23rd doesn't become a time bomb which blows this country apart. I'm wondering whether the Deputy Premier would be able to tell the people of Alberta whether this government has any sense of whether a First Minister's meeting before June the 23rd would be positive, or whether it would simply tend to polarize the differences and therefore be inadvisable.
Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity on Saturday last of meeting with Senator Murray in Medicine Hat for almost 2 hours, in which we reviewed the Charest task force, or a select committee of the House of Commons, and the recommendations which they put forward. That was about midway through his tour of Canada and meeting with provincial governments. He concluded that series of discussions last evening in Quebec City with the Premier of the province of Quebec. Reports which have come from that meeting would indicate that the province of Quebec is prepared to meet again with First Ministers to review the situation with respect to Meech Lake and the other issues that have been raised by other governments. But of course it will become an issue for the Prime Minister to ultimately determine as to whether or not First Minister's Conference would be warranted. It has been the position of our government, and I restate it today, that it is in the interests of Canada for the First Ministers to gather once again in an effort to unlock the dilemma. In connection with part of the honourable member's question as well, the issue of Senate reform, of course, has been the #1 agenda item, which we believe must be dealt with, and which I've stated in this Assembly before on numerous occasions. This issue of Senate reform, a firm commitment to proceed with that issue and that matter could be the very key which unlocks the dilemma. We believe that is worth considering, and that we must make every effort to ensure that it does happen.
Well, I wonder whether the Deputy Premier would be able to advise whether the government has in mind a strategy in the event that there is no First Ministers meeting before June 23rd, or there is an impasse in such dealings, whether the Minister has in mind a strategy of diffusing the time bomb by extending the June 23rd deadline. Does the government consider that to be a meaningful approach?
To extend the deadline, and that has been suggested by some commentators and speculators in the past while, would require a very major effort on the part of legislatures across the country. It would in fact require a constitutional amendment, and each province would have to agree to do that, bring forward legislation or resolutions to extend the deadline, and likewise that would have to be accomplished by the Canadian Parliament, which includes both the House of Commons and the Canadian Senate. To do that all within the remaining time period would be a very major effort, and our view is that if we're going to go through that whole procedure, it would be better to deal with whatever might come from a First Ministers' Conference by way of a parallel accord, if that could be achieved.
Well, I can assure the Deputy Premier that his government will have the full cooperation of the Alberta Liberal Party in the event that there is such an initiative to extend the deadline. Now, I assume the government is considering future options, and I'm wondering whether the Deputy Premier might advise whether the government is considering the option of a future constitutional conference with representation from broad segments of the public from all provinces, since one of the main defects of the Meech Lake Accord has been the absence of broad public support for a document imposed by 11 First Ministers.
Well, it's interesting to note that the Liberal Party might be prepared to come into this Assembly and vote on issues as important to Canada as the Meech Lake Accord.
Where were they
I
before?
recall that they weren't able to find their way in here for that on one previous occasion. Mr. Speaker, it's very, very difficult in the time remaining for us to invent a new constitutional amendment procedure, as this seems to be suggested by the honourable member for Calgary-Buffalo. Because what has happened, of course, with respect to the debates on Meech Lake, and I would remind honourable members that this Assembly debated the issue at length. It was introduced in the spring, held over until the fall session in 1987 before it was passed. That involved enormous public consultation. I know the official opposition carried out their own particular investigation of it across the province. Our members were encouraged to do the same. And there was a great deal of public debate and discussion in Alberta. Other provinces dealt with it in other ways. The government of Ontario, for example, had a select committee which held public hearings. This notion that it was brought about solely by 11 ministers is completely false. The fact of the matter is that it has been passed through the legislatures with debate by elected representatives in 8 of the 10 provinces. It's not been dealt with now by New Brunswick or Manitoba, but in both those cases there have been full public hearings. So the notion that Meech Lake has been dealt with solely by 11 people meeting behind closed doors is just the falsehood which should be debunked. And despite the fact that I do it again, I doubt that the honourable member for Buffalo will accept that.
Athabasca Laklavish, followed by Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question today is to the Minister of Labour. Time and time again, I've brought forward to this House concerns regarding the social worker strike and the negative impact this has on some Albertans, especially those living in poverty, and there are thousands living in poverty in Alberta and thousands more in northern Alberta in particular. And if we listen to the official leaders' economic policies, we probably could employ a lot of northern Albertans dismantling the industries in the north. Mr. Speaker, I understand there was a back-to-work agreement signed this weekend, in fact on Tuesday. My question to the Honourable Minister is, would the Minister explain in detail what this back-to-work agreement means to Albertans?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the back-to-work agreement is an agreement that resulted from discussions which sets up a protocol to get the social workers back to their jobs. That, as I said on Friday, was our first objective, and our main objective there being to get the services back to normal for all of Albertans. And once they had gone back to work, we could get back to the contract negotiations. That also was a term of the back-to-work agreement, that we would begin negotiating the contract terms, that is to say the issues there being caseloads, salaries, and wage parity. We'll get back to negotiating those at 10 o'clock on Friday morning. The back-to-work agreement also contains in it a commitment signed both by the union and by the government to work very hard at those contract negotiations to bring the whole matter to a resolution. In fact, it goes so far as to say the employer and the union agree to make serious efforts to engage in collective bargaining until an agreement is reached. That recommencement of collective bargaining will be at 10 o'clock on Friday morning this week, which is a position that we have wanted to be in ever since April 26th and have been prevented from being because of the illegal strike.
Mr. Speaker, my question to the Honourable Minister of Labour, some of my constituents have concerns of being possibly suspended because of taking part in the illegal strike. Could the Minister explain and give us some assurance as to what status this agreement has in relation to suspensions?
Mr. Speaker, it was part of the back-to-work protocol that there be no striking staff being fired as a result of participation in normal strike activity, and also that strikers would face, all strikers would face, a one-day suspension to anyone who had been engaged in strike activity. Moreover, none of the employees who had been on an illegal strike would receive any pay for that period of time, nor would their pension benefits be accruing for that period of time while they were out on an illegal strike.
Edmonton Avonmore.
Mr. Speaker, my questions are to the chairman of the Alberta Alcohol and Drug Abuse Commission. Earlier this session, the chairman of ADAC assured the House that checks and balances were in place for the controversial Kids of the Canadian West drug addiction program, which is scheduled to open this fall in Calgary. But now we find out that this is not the case. Government officials from several departments, including Health and the Solicitor General, will meet soon to discuss how to license this facility and how to deal with its potential violation of Alberta laws. My question is, why weren't these issues examined and resolved before the government gave a $600,000 grant to the kids program last year?
Mr. Speaker, in recommending monies to be provided to Kids of the Canadian West, we went through and did all these checks and balances, and quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, it is my opinion at the present time that they are in place.
Seems to be some dispute about that. My next question is to the Minister of Health. Research has shown that up to 70% of adolescent drug abusers are victims of childhood sexual misuse and abuse of power by adults with authority. The KIDS program represents a perpetuation of authority being used in an abusive manner, but complete rehabilitation requires conditions of trust and non-abusive human relationships. Therefore, will the minister require mental health professionals in her department to do an in-depth evaluation of the mental health effects of the KIDS program on its graduates and the dropouts from that program?
Mr. Speaker, I'm at a bit of a loss as to why the question has come to me. I'll certainly take the suggestion of the honourable member under advisement, but I think the honourable member or the chairman of the Alberta Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Commission has responded and may wish to supplement the allegation that was made in the prelude to the question.
Calgary McCall.
Mr. Speaker, some of the concerns that are raised by the member for Edmonton-Avonmore certainly have been addressed and will continue to be addressed with regards to the program. And again, I must emphasize, Mr. Speaker, that the checks and balances and the agreement that was signed by ADAC and the proponents of this facility are such that it is our belief that we will have a first-class program that will enhance the addiction work that ADAC presently has within the province and provide Alberta and continue to provide Alberta with the leadership role that we have in the addictions field.
Okay. Calgary Northwest, followed by Calgary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Advanced Education seems to believe that he can lead this assembly in one direction and lead the public in another. On May the 16th, in this legislature, the minister stated in reference to Bill number 27 that each of the advanced education institutions had been consulted prior to the preparation of the bill. And yet some institutions, Mr. Speaker, would suggest that that is not the case. I have 4 copies of a letter that I'd like to table from the University of Calgary Board of Governors. And the letter states, and I quote, "We have found ourselves without any prior consultation," unquote, to this bill. And so my question to the Minister of Advanced Education is, which is it, the line that you hand to the Assembly, that here it is, they've been consulted, or the line that you give to the universities, that here it is, folks, take it or leave it?
Mr. Speaker, it's neither, and I take some offense to the insinuation of the honourable member. For the benefit of the member for Northwest and others, last July, Mr. Speaker, I issued guidelines for system development to all the institutions in Alberta, some 29 of them, and I simply quote, "Ministerial approval is required for changes to approved programs to study exactly what the honourable member is referring to in the bill, which involve terminations or equivalent actions or reductions." Mr. Speaker, the response from the institutions to me was that they were in agreement with the guidelines which preceded the bill.
Well, curiously, Mr. Speaker, over the last 6 days, the University of Calgary, the University of Alberta, and even the University of Lethbridge, of which the Minister may be familiar, have passed resolutions condemning Bill number 27, specifically Section 67, Sub 2, regarding this particular amendment. So, Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member from Medicine Hat might say, there are none so deaf as those who will not hear. My question to the Minister of Advanced Education is this. Will he now withdraw the bill and do the consulting that he said he would do before implementing this bill? Let's get it right.
Your question. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the honourable member's participation in the second meeting in principle in Bill 27, where I can amplify exactly what has happened and what's going to happen with the support of the House, the bill that will be passed.
Fish Creek, followed by Edmonton Millwoods.
No money in trees.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent weeks, Mr. Speaker, references to Quebec in our province and in this Assembly have consistently related to the Meech Lake Accord and the companion resolution. There is, however, Mr. Speaker, a Quebec-related issue, another one, that could have an even greater economic impact on our province, and that has to do with Quebec's possible involvement in the Oslo project. And I'm wondering if the Minister of Energy could report to the Assembly today on the status of our discussions with Quebec regarding Oslo project participation.
Mr. Speaker, a couple of months ago, the Premier of Alberta had a conversation with both the Premiers of Ontario and Quebec with regard to potential participation in the Oslo project. As the Honourable Member for Calgary-Fish Creek knows, and as I've indicated to him previously in the House, we have embarked on discussions with the Ministry of Energy in the province of Ontario and the Provincial Treasurer in the province of Ontario, and those discussions are moving toward a meeting between myself and those respective ministries. With regard to Quebec, our Premier did have a conversation with Premier Bourassa with regard to potential Quebec participation in the Oslo project. Mr. Bourassa has given us some ideas that we can pursue, some leads that we can pursue. Mr. Bourassa's preference is to consider participation in Oslo through some of the corporations in which the province of Quebec has an interest, and I'll certainly be following up on that suggestion.
Mr. Speaker, I trust you won't deem this to be a hypothetical question. I'll frame it as a request for policy clarification. Does the Minister see any connection between the possibility of Quebec's investment in Oslo and the forthcoming response of Quebec to the Meech Lake Accord's final resolution?
Mr. Speaker, with regard to my area of responsibility, and that is for the development of the energy resources in the province of Alberta, I believe that today or tomorrow it is in the best interest of the province of Quebec and the province of Ontario, our two largest provinces, to promote and participate in the development of oil sands within the boundaries of the province of Alberta. Mr. Speaker, it's abundantly clear to me that it is not in the best interest of either of those provinces, let alone the rest of this country, to rely on the features of the Middle East, whether it be geopolitical concerns or whether it be transportation concerns with regard to crude oil to this continent. They should take a real fundamental interest in security of supply for those two very important reasons. That is the basis on which we're pitching the provinces of Ontario and Quebec, and quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, it's the basis on which we were quite critical of the federal government for ignoring those two very compelling issues.
Edmonton Millwoods, followed by Edmonton Deputy Premier.
I'd like to supplement the question somewhat, and I would like to assure the honourable member that there is no linkage between the Meech Lake discussions now underway and the discussions with respect to the possible involvement of Quebec in the Oslo project.
Edmonton Millwoods, followed by Edmonton Meadowlark.
Mr. Speaker, the appalling carnage at Alberta work sites continues unabated, with the latest tragedy being the death of Mr. Roger Doucette at the Diashawa plant near Peace River. This is the second fatality at this site in less than 3 months. And yet, Mr. Speaker, I note that Hugh Walker, the managing director of the department, has recently stated at an injuries conference that it is not the department's policy to look at fines as a major accident prevention strategy. Now, given that appalling and shocking admission, will the minister now admit that the recent legislative changes that provided for occupational and health and safety violation penalties of up to $300,000 and jail terms were nothing but a farce, and a cruel farce?
Exactly. Okay. We got the question, Jerry.
Well,
Well, Mr. Speaker, I guess the honourable member needs a lesson in how the system works. When you have a fatality at a construction site, Occupation Health and Safety reviews the matter, provides all the documentation, all the material from the investigation to the Attorney General's Department. The Attorney General Department then takes it forward if they feel they have a case before the courts. Now the courts then hear the evidence from both sides. So what I guess what the honourable member of the NDP is saying, he has no faith and no respect for the judges, because it's the judge that decides the fine, whether it's $1 or whether it's $300,000. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have before me where a judge just did that, on hearing the evidence from both sides, makes that decision. So when the honourable member says it's a farce, then he's taken into question the judgment of our judges.
Right on. Mr. Speaker, he just admitted that it's the Attorney General who presses those cases and presses for a penalty, and the penalties are certainly not high enough. But let me just ask the Minister this. Given that the Workers' Compensation Board's own figures reveal that there's been no progress in reducing the number of deaths on the job in this province, will the Minister tell us how many Albertans he's prepared to see die at work before he takes the kind of measures that are provided for in his own act and demand those maximum penalties?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I guess the honourable member can understand, because the penalties are decided by the courts after the evidence is provided from Occupation Health and Safety to the Attorney General's Department, and they carry it forward. Now, surely the honourable member isn't saying that the judges in this province are wrong. And if he is, I'd like to hear him say that outside the House and challenge the judge that presents these penalties. Surely the honourable member should caution himself in the words he uses, and I think it's a disgrace on what he said against our judges.
Edmonton Meadowlark. Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last night in justifying the proceeding with licensing to Diashawa without proper public hearings process, the Minister of the Environment apologized and said, "I just don't seem to have the legislative authority." That was ironic, coming from a minister who had the authority to impose a public consultative process on Procter & Gamble for its relicensing. Procter & Gamble, a mill that is underway, fully constructed, has been operating. This is odd, coming from a minister who had the power to impose a public hearings process on the Alberta Pacific project long after this government made a commitment to that project. This is very odd, coming from a minister who had the power to tell Diashawa to change its construction plans long after Diashawa had begun construction. A pretty powerful minister, Mr. Speaker, up to about...
Please, honourable member. Sufficient introduction to the question.
Minister of the Environment, please admit that in fact he has the legislative authority to do whatever has to be done in this Diashawa case, but that he cannot exercise his mandate under his department because the Premier...
Thank you, honourable member. Thank you, honourable member.
Well, heavy thumping over there. Mr. Speaker, I'll make no such admission. Mr. Speaker, I'll explain once again, for the benefit of the honourable member for Meadowlark and the honourable member for Jasper Place, that when this mill was first proposed and when this company came to Alberta and said that they wanted to build a mill on the banks of the Peace River, near the town of Peace River, there was not a peep. Not a peep. Not a peep. Not a peep, Mr. Speaker. There was no demand.
Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister. Honourable members have enough sense to be able to refer to Beauchesne, and shouting liar across the chamber is inappropriate, unparliamentary, and is exceedingly rude, and please refrain from doing so. Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I've tried to find some record of demands for public hearings and demands for a demand
Minister of the Environment, the member for Edmonton Jasper Place has had an opportunity to be in question period, perhaps might even get back in if we had enough questions being able to be asked. Please control yourself. Minister of the Environment.
Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, the company came to this province, wanted to put in place a mill, a clean mill, went through the environmental impact assessment process that was in place at that particular time, played by all the rules, refitted that mill midway through to add even more environmental protection standards to make it probably one of the cleanest mills in the world, using some of the best environmental protection technology available today. Mr. Speaker, this company played by all the rules that were in place. Yes, we're changing those rules. We're changing those rules, and we're going to put in place a formal process for public hearings on new projects. But one can hardly expect, Mr. Speaker, to go back and change the rules midstream, especially days and weeks before the mill is to operate. I say once again, once this mill is built, what do they expect people to do with it? Just sit there and look at it? Just sit there and look at it?
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Order, please. Order, please. Supplementary Edmonton Meadowlark.
Mr. Speaker, last night the minister went on to say, while I am disappointed, my commitment is to implement public review of licenses by including such provisions in the upcoming Alberta Environment Protection and Enhancement Act. Why doesn't the minister just go one step further, delay the licensing of this plant the 2 or 3 weeks that it will take him to bring the Natural Resources Conservation Board legislation to this legislature, put the powers in that legislation to review Diashawa properly under that board before he allows the licensing to proceed?
Well, again, he is asking for a total change in the rules. We said that we will change, we said that we will change the rules.
Honourable Minister, I apologize to you. Honourable Member for Edmonton Meadowlark, you asked your question. Please have the decency to sit there and listen to the answer. Thank you, Honourable Member. It can be arranged otherwise. Minister of the Environment, please.
Mr. Speaker, we're refining the rules. We're refining the technology that applies to these pulp mills. But my gosh, you know, you can't be retroactive. How far back do you go? Do you go back 50 years? Do you go back to those stinking, rotten, polluting, belching pulp mills that were built 30, 40, 50 years ago and apply public hearings to them? What we have said, Mr. Speaker, is that we will put in place a review process, a public legislated review process, to monitor the licenses. What we have done, and I think it's commendable on the part of this government, is to issue licenses for a 3-year period. These aren't lifetime licenses. And to put in place, Mr. Speaker, a review process that will allow the public to review on a day-to-day, on a minute-to-minute basis, if need be, the operating procedures of a pulp mill and to make recommendations to government prior to the reissuance of those mills. But to do these things retroactively, Mr. Speaker, I guess one then would have to ask the question, how far back do you go? How far back do you go? Are these people willing to go back 40, 50 years? Is the honourable member for Jasper Place willing to stand up with his buddy from West Yellowhead and go back and say retroactively we should do an EIA on the Hinton Mill, which was built in...
Thank you. Thank you. Red Deer North, and if there's time, West Yellowhead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of the Environment. We hear a lot from the Minister about environmental standards, and I was encouraged today somewhat to hear from an opposition member that Sweden hopes to have in place by the end of the century standards we have in place today, but I'd like some clarification. It makes me a little nervous, Mr. Speaker, to hear that, makes me a little concerned to hear that halfway through the construction of a mill of this size, a refit has to take place. If our standards are that good, why, Mr. Speaker, was this not caught in the initial phase instead of this having to take place halfway through?
When the mill was first proposed, Mr. Speaker, this thing, absorbable organic halides, AOX, had a formula of 2.5 kilograms per air-dried ton. As technology advanced, new standards were deemed to be better than 2.5 AOX and were deemed to be achievable. And those new standards turned out to be 1.5 AOX. So we said, as a department and as a government, that the new standard now is 1.5 AX. Therefore, before this mill can come on stream, they must meet 1.5 AOX. And that's what I mean, Mr. Speaker, by mills having to meet on a constant basis, on a consistent basis, the best available technology to protect the environment. I'm glad the question was asked because it gave me an opportunity once again, to explain for the benefit of the opposition what it means to have the best available environmental protection standards in the world.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary to the minister responsible for our forests, a mill of this size is going to have quite an appetite for trees, and what we're talking about is the green lungs of our province. Albertans don't want just vague assurances. They want some specific regulations, guidelines. What can the minister tell us that will give us some assurance that as forestry operations go forward, we're not going to see a collapse of the green lungs of our province?
Mr. Speaker, we all support the fact that the trees are certainly the lungs of the earth, but that mill will not only be using roundwood, it's using chips that are presently being burned and causing an environmental problem. As well as that, the wood that is cut, the reforestation practices that they must follow are among, if not the toughest in the world, and we're making them even tougher, with very tough operating ground rules and a public process that I'm nearly ready to announce that will give the public an opportunity to review those cutting practices, review the reforestation, have input into that continually over the lifetime of the project. So, Mr. Speaker, I take the honourable member's representation as serious. It's raised with me by many Albertans to make sure that our trees and our forests are better for our grandchildren than they even are today.
Perhaps we could have unanimous consent to revert to the introduction of special guests. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. First, Red Deer North, followed by Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honor for me today to introduce to you on behalf of our Premier a group of students from the Stettler Junior High School. They are accompanied by their teachers Larry Amberry, Dawn Anderson, Karen Bromley, and parent Charlene Butt. And Mr. Speaker, the Premier talks many times warmly of the young people of Stettler. Some of them are here today. I'd ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of this assembly.
Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife.
Mr. Speaker, it's not very often that I get to introduce a school class because it's so far to come, and I've certainly never had the opportunity to introduce one from Staveley, a very fine community in my constituency. But today we have 29 students from the Staveley School. Their teacher, Hala Georgie Lacoste, and parents Margot Coughlin, Eunice Gates, Sandy Heidmiller, Jeanette Vector, Kathy McDonald, Barry Gamble, Adele Chartrand, and Melva Comstock are here. They're in the public gallery, Mr. Speaker. They've driven about 5 to 6 hours to get here. I would like to see a warm welcome given to them by the members of the Legislative Assembly.
Actually, honourable members, the Chair had overlooked a note that had been sent up earlier. The Minister of Health wishes to respond to an issue raised the other day by the member for Edmonton Centre. Minister of Health, please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Last week, the Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre raised a question with respect to an elderly patient at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. And I would like to advise the House of the following. Firstly, with respect to the individual named by the member, it's not my practice to name individuals with respect to their health coverage on the floor of the legislature, and I don't intend to change that practice. Nonetheless, I have reviewed the situation with the hospital, and I have been advised that although the person's admission was delayed, I have been assured that medical and nursing treatment occurred during that period of time. Secondly, the member went on to question the government's commitment to the redevelopment project at the Royal Alexandra Hospital, and I want to assure the House again that the government recognizes the pressures being faced by this facility, which operates one of the busiest emergencies in Canada. And it is because of that recognition that we have placed a priority on the project, as I explained during my estimates a week ago. And although it may not be moving as quickly as many of us would have hoped, the project is still progressing. And as a matter of fact, I met yesterday with the board of the Royal Alexandra Hospital and discussed a wide range of issues, including the redevelopment project.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the Minister's good attempts to try to gloss over this issue, but clearly it is unacceptable for an 87-year-old woman to be delayed admission in one of our hospitals and to be in a hallway. I mean, obviously she's going to receive nursing and medical treatment. In fact, she was in a hallway for up to well over 48 hours. It continues to be unacceptable, Mr. Speaker, and I know the Minister is trying to work at getting the redevelopment at the Royal Alec completed, which is no doubt the answer to this kind of issue recurring. So I want to ask the Minister very clearly, when will they turn the sod, when will they begin the construction and complete the construction so that this kind of incident for this 87-year-old and other 87-year-olds don't have to happen anymore in this city?
Speaker, it is reality that our hospitals get a little squeezed sometimes. That is the reality of our health system. We have more beds per capita in this province than any other province across Canada. If the Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition, would like to discuss it sometime rather than making his guffaws, I would be delighted to do so. With respect to the redevelopment process, I can't give the Honourable Member a time except to say that it is my hope that within the fiscal capacity of the province we can be into construction on this project in the 91-92 fiscal year.
Thank you. We had a point of order during question period. No, that's it. The Honourable Member.
Just introduce, that's all I was wanting to do.
Forgive me? Oh, an introduction as well. Please, I guess we'll have the consent of the House. We'll take it as an overriding concern. Please, Edmonton Centre. It would be more useful in future, Honourable Members, to send the notes up here ahead of time. It's too confusing here.
Apologies, I got the note rather late and I was trying to get your attention. I'll send a note in the future, I'm sorry. But I do have a class from the St. Joseph's High School in Edmonton Centre, a class of 14 English as second language students, a very important program at the school, and I'm glad the students are here to witness the legislative debate, and I'd ask them now to please rise and receive the welcome from the members.
Thank you. Point of order for rising from question period, Edmonton Jasper Place.
Mr. Speaker, during question period, the member for Red Deer North arose and accused me of suggesting that Sweden bring in current Alberta standards for pulp mill effluent 10 years from now. And I couldn't imagine a more damaging set of words to put in my mouth. In fact, the Swedish standard 10 years from now is 0. And perhaps the minister might, or the member might understand the difference between 0 and what we have in Alberta. If he looks at the 24-hour levels in the Daishawa permit, they're allowed to dump 2,800 kilograms.
Honourable Member, order, please. Order, please. The Chair has attempted to send a message for the member for Red Deer North to return to the chamber. That has not occurred. The Chair then notes that the member for Edmonton Jasper Place has given appropriate immediate notice to the Chair. The matter will be discussed tomorrow or later this afternoon if opportunity does arise. Thank you. Orders of the day. Point of order, yes, sir?
I gave notice under Standing Order 42.